Hey, this is Kirk.
And this is Byrd. It's the Kirk and Byrd Show. And we are joined today by two class of 1983 Hampton High School football legends. We are blessed to have Robert Banks and Kevin Gould. Welcome to the show, guys.
How we doing?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks
Glad
for the
to be with
invite.
y'all. Glad to be with
Oh,
y'all.
yeah.
Yeah, guys, we're very excited to have you on, and the Crabber Nation, whatever you guys call yourselves, they're all like, yeah, let's go. We were talking before we got on camera, so we're going to have a good time. We like telling stories, and we want to hear y'all's stories, but we would like to encourage people to subscribe to us on YouTube, the Kirk and Byrd Show. We're going to overlay it all. It'll sit there for about 90 seconds, and as I was telling you, Robert and Kevin, we did a very extensive interview with Coach Mike Smith, and it's episode 44. This is going to be episode 79. So let's go ahead and get started. So you're both class of 1983, 82 football season. I remember it succinctly because I was in 8th grade, and I do remember going to the playoffs. And Kevin, I remember you were the starting quarterback, and I believe Marco Stacy was the year before you, Kevin?
That's correct.
Right.
That's 100%.
And help me out here, and we'll get going with you guys. Was that the year that I believe you played Highland Springs at Todd during the day on a Saturday in the state semis?
Correct. I believe
Okay.
that's correct.
Yep.
I believe that's correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the second game, Rob. Well, that's the second game of the playoffs, right, Rob?
Yeah,
Right.
second game because we had to get by a team out of
Beach,
Virginia
probably.
Beach first.
Right.
Yeah. So Highland Springs, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Remember that. Again, they were undefeated, and that was a big game.
Yeah,
So,
I'll tell you real quick, that game was interesting because at the time, Highland Springs was titled as one of the largest high school teams ever in regards to their size of their players.
oh,
Okay.
Because I don't know if you remember this, but when we got off the bus at Todd Stadium, their fans were standing outside watching us get off the bus, and they made the comment that must be their JV. That's the comment they made, but oddly enough, that fueled us before we even hit the field because again, that Highland Springs team was noted as one of the largest high school football teams ever.
yeah.
Wow.
Interesting.
And they've gone on to still continue a rich tradition in high school football, especially over these last 12
Yes.
years under Coach Lauren Johnson from
Absolutely.
Virginia Tech.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you guys, you both played on state championship teams, right? In 80, 81. So you both got 2 rings?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Tell us about some of those seasons. Not that your senior year probably wasn't special, but tell us about, you being 10th and 11th graders at a school that's rich in football tradition and history. Tell us about that.
Let me go first on that, Rob, if you would. As a sophomore, I basically had in my mind before the season started that I wanted to make the team. I wanted to be on the sideline just wearing a Crabber uniform. Literally, that was sort of my mindset. Hampton it's not a place you go in as a sophomore typically and play. And a person of my stature, I was actually thinking baseball might be my ticket. Okay. Came out of Jeff Davis, integrated baseball there, played as an 8th grader, 9th grader, pitcher.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And we ran the table my 8th and 9th grade year at Jeff Davis. So, as I said, I was a pitcher. Had a really solid year, 1 hitter, 2 hitter, 3 hitter, 4 hitter, pitched 4 games, 4 and out. So I'm thinking, I'm going to Hampton and I'm going to be playing baseball. So anyways, fast forward, man, season started, 2-a-days, got hurt, got staph infection. I apologize, didn't get hurt, staph infection. Came back to practice after sitting at home in the bed for about 3 days with a swollen knee, plus all kinds of stuff. But anyways, I get out there to practice, man. I'm in crutches, so guys are talking mad trash to me. Hey, go, you get in the back of the line, blah, 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 hold the dummy, whatever. And that was on a tour day. I was wearing, using crutches in the morning, got out there that evening, I shoot it up. Now that was the mistake I made. I put my pads on, and next thing you know, I'm in practice, man, and I'm playing safety. I don't know how I get in there, but they trying to find out who I am. I'm the youngest of 10 children. Had a lot of brothers that played before me. So I'm not gonna mention the names, but somebody broke up the middle, man, and I cracked him. And after I cracked him, it was like, okay, take note of that number. That number, I don't know what number I was wearing at the time. I wore number 12. That day, I might have another number, but I cracked somebody, and from that point on, it was like I was getting reps, and I was like, "Wow, this is crazy." So that's how it went for me. I went from not expecting to play, and that's how it works at Hampton. You get a moment, you do something.
Yeah.
If you don't, next man up. So that's how it went, man. And from that point on, I was a madman. I was hitting anything that moved. Hey, might have been on my own, might have been on defense. I was gonna hit you, but hey, that's how things went for me as a sophomore, and I won't get into too many more details, but I ended up starting. So that's my story.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that is important, that back in that time, starting as a 10th grader was a huge deal, you know.
And not just starting as a 10th grader, but starting at Hampton High School.
At Hampton High School. Yeah.
I'll fill it in a little bit. Terrence Howell was playing both ways. And I used to, you know, I'm standing on the sideline and say, I'm happy as a pig in mud. But bro, Terrence Howell, you could have put a car tire around him and he would not have moved outside of the inside of that tire on various plays. Dude he was worn out, man. He was looking to the sideline saying, "Coach, get me out of the game. Get me out of the game. I ain't got nothing." So fortunately, George Lumpkins was playing safety.
Okay.
Moved Lumpkins up. Bam, I got a shot.
Wow.
I got a shot, man.
You know,
I was
Kev, it's
like,
interesting that you bring up Terrence Howell, and this is a whole different conversation. But Terrence Howell may have been one of the best three-sport athletes that came out of Hampton High at the high school level. At the high school level,
He follows us too. I'm pretty sure he follows.
The guy was tremendous.
Does he?
Oh wow.
I would imagine that's good to know. You say he's following you guys.
He may be because he played basketball and baseball, right?
Right.
He played them all.
Played them all.
Terrence had a uniform all the time. Yeah, he had a uniform on year round.
Yeah.
Kevin, did you play baseball at Hampton, or did you just stick with football?
I did not. I scratched it. Made second team All-State as a sophomore. It was a dream.
Wow.
It was a dream, literally. So I had intended on playing baseball, 100%.
Yeah.
They were a couple of guys on the team, man. They were really, really trying to get me to come out. But I was like $160. I was like, I gotta hit the weight room.
Weights, yeah,
Letters started coming. And I was like, maybe this thing is gonna work. So that's how it was, man. I had no idea how things would fall in place. So, hey,
right,
I'm very, very blessed.
So, Robert, one thing about you is that you jumped onto the scene. We were talking that you started at Peninsula Catholic, and you both met at St. Mary's Catholic School down in old downtown Phoebus.
Yep.
But you were back then very big and very athletic. These kids now are so big, they don't realize. Tell us about your size. And I know you switched from defensive tackle to defensive end, and then you also played offensive line. That's not uncommon back in those days to go both ways, but you were a big guy back then, and a big guy who could move, which obviously had a lot to do with you being a national recruit. But tell us about, starting at Peninsula Catholic and then going over to Hampton.
Well, it's odd, when you brought up my size. I was 6 foot in the 5th grade.
Wow.
And so at St. Mary's, where Reggie Fullwood and Darren, all of us was there, were at St. Mary's. I hit a growth spurt between 4th grade and 5th grade, right? I have an older brother. We're 11 months apart. And we were the same height when he was 5th grade and I was 4th grade. Over that summer, I shot up to 6 foot, right? So I entered the 5th grade, 6 feet tall. I wore a size 13 shoe. So a lot of my childhood, early childhood, I was not comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah.
And you know, I had played Pop Warner football, but after that, I didn't play football again until the 10th grade. But feeling, you know, and I was a bit awkward, you know, not really coordinated.
Yep.
And played basketball because, you know, if you grow up off of Shell Road, that's what you do. You play ball. Everybody play basketball, right? You shoot hoops. But I always tell young people this: sometimes you got to spend a little quiet time and to figure out what direction you need to go and who you are as a person. And you know, being in that awkward state during that time, one night, you know, my parents used to let us stay up on Friday night and Saturday night, you know, past you know, late morning, and I'm waiting for Creature Feature.
Oh yeah,
to come on, right?
Yeah. Creature Feature.
And there was a show that came on before Creature Feature on Friday night, and it was the lifestyle of the rich and famous.
Yeah.
And they featured a guy. I can't think of his first name, but his last name was Kuchenberg, I believe.
Oh.
And he played for the Miami Dolphins, right? His last name was Kuchenberg. I'm almost positive of this. And he played for the Miami Dolphins, and I'm going, why is he on a lifestyle of the rich and famous, right? And the guy owned an island, a small island somewhere off of the Florida coast. And I'm going, well, dang, you know, if I play ball, right, I can be rich and famous, okay? And that's what the whole football thing, because, you know, playing Little League, I was pretty good Little League player. You know, everybody's good in Little League, right? And
not Kirk.
Yeah. so it stuck with me. I think one time I was trying to get over to Jeff Davis. I was attending Peninsula Catholic, and I was trying to get over to Jeff Davis to play ball. You know, I had some guys that I grew up in the neighborhood with. Hey, talk to your coach and see if I can come over there and play football, right? So everyone in my neighborhood knew of me, but I hadn't played football since Pop Warner. Well, I convinced my mom to allow me to transfer to Hampton in the 10th grade. And really, she didn't give the go-ahead until the day you had to register at the high school to attend. She did not agree to that. I mean, that morning I woke up and I was like, Mom, I said, are you gonna go and register me over at Hampton? And she didn't want to do it, right? And she gave me that look. You know, my mom's Baptist, right? You know, having an opinion is back talk. You know, the way I grew up, right? And she went over, man, and she registered me, and I had to make the best of that situation. But growing up in that area, I heard about, you know, the Simon Guptons and the Woodrow Wilsons and the Lamont Oak and Holloman and, you know, J.J. Phillips and Pedro Phillips. So, you know, I was growing up in that area, and it was my goal to go to Hampton High and play linebacker, right? Because I had met Coach Mann over at Hampton Institute when they used to have the summer program. You know,
I was in that.
Bus, go over to Hampton, and Coach Mann was coaching tennis, you know, at the time. And you know, way back then, he said, "Hey, you come to Hampton High, you play linebacker for me." So when I went to Hampton High, my goal was to play linebacker and to be mentioned in the same breath as your Lamont Holtz and Brian Hollemans and all the great linebackers. But you know, that opportunity came the first day of practice, though. Let me digress for a moment. I used to sneak out and run over to Hampton High and work out in their weight room when I was in, I don't know, 7th, 8th, 9th grade. Right? I'd sneak in and work out and then run back home. But when I got that opportunity, I got to Hampton, and the first day of practice, I guess a senior had graduated off of the offensive line. So I guess they had tabbed, I didn't know anything, they had tabbed me to play offensive line, right? Not to start or anything, but put them at offensive line because we got a void in that area. And I recall Coach Mann telling me, okay, when we break out in our different groups, you run down with the linebackers, right? So when we broke out in our group, I'm headed down with the linebackers. and the offensive line coach, Coach Stogner, he goes, oh, no. You come on back up here. You come on back up here. And so I started off playing O-line. And this is the thing. I practice every day against an all-district defensive end by the name of Abe Jones. Abe Jones was a all-district defensive end at the time. So that was my test.
Yeah.
Right. And Abe and I went at it. I became a starter on the offensive line, but I'm still trying to get over to the defensive side of the ball. So we had a scrimmage that year. And at the scrimmage, I'm going, how am I going to get to the defensive side of the ball? Well, the team we scrimmaged against left me uncovered. And they had they gave me a free shot to the linebacker. So I was depleting that linebacker, right? So that next week, they had me also trying out at defensive end. So by the time the first game rolled around, I was starting at offensive tackle and defensive tackle. And
wow.
And there it went.
Wow.
So Rob, you played both ways. You played both ways right out the gate.
I played both ways. By the time the first game rolled around, I was playing both ways.
Wow. At Hampton High School.
Jeff, was crazy. Our first game, I believe it was against, I want to say Patrick Henry, our 10th grade year.
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay,
sir.
this is what's crazy, guys. All right, when there's a change of possession, right? We're on offense. Everybody running off the field for the defense to come on, right? So again, this was my first time playing organized football since Pop Warner.
Right.
So I would run off the doggone field with the offense and then turn around, had to run back because I was on defense until I finally figured out, Robert, stop running off the field with the offense. But, I'm just trying to fit in, big moment, right?
Yeah.
and man, I thought I had a senior man drug me through that game because my lungs were on fire.
I'm sure.
Oh,
Patrick Henry was ready for that night too, brother.
Yes.
That was Patrick Henry Ashland.
Roanoke.
Richmond Patrick.
Roanoke.
Roanoke. Yeah, that's
Roanoke.
the program too.
Roanoke.
Yep.
We actually Beth for my senior year, we went up and played them. They played in the city stadium too. So you guys, when you talk about youth football and youth sports, what league, what team did you play for? Do you remember? Did you guys play for Mallory, Keaton, Armstrong, or do you remember Fox Hill? Do you know?
I was a career Keaton guy.
Okay.
Remember playing against Robert when he was with Tucker Caps. So that was your last year of, I guess, rec ball, or
right.
I think that was your last years. But yeah, we played against you guys, I think at Forest Elementary. So, but Keaton's was definitely my avenue, and that program, I'm calling it, set Hampton apart, I believe, from every other school in the district. I mean, it was a pipeline.
Yeah.
I mean, we got pictures, man. Basically, our whole team back playing Keatons. You go from Victor Hill, I can rewind that all the way back to Keatons. So we've been playing together. That's something that a lot of teams probably didn't have, the benefit of playing together as a young guy. So you knew this cat right here is something special. Put him in the right position. And I like to play. I know what his capabilities are from a youngster. So, by the time we got to high school, it wasn't a whole lot of, figuring out. We knew what each person could do well. Yeah, so hey, we had a huge advantage.
Growing up in the city of Hampton, I loved football. So, and my mom, I wanted to play football because I grew up originally across from Robert E. First I lived off Shell Road and Maple Avenue, right by the cemetery, right at near the Newport News line. Yep. So that's where I first lived, and then eventually we moved over by Robert E. Lee, and I just remember, wanting to be a Hampton Crabber and playing football with the big kids in the neighborhood. I remember the first time some big kid knocked me out, and I was like, okay, that was fun. That was cool, And Rick Watson was my neighbor, and I think he hit me. Wow. But then we moved, and then, we moved in. I ended up playing youth football, and I begged my mom. And I remember she asked my stepdad. She said, "What position can he play where my baby won't get hurt?" He was like, my pops used to. He coached football at Buckrow, Jones, and at Phoebus. But he said, the only thing he could probably play is some kicker or holding. He ain't gonna want to do that. So he promised I wouldn't get hurt. But I played for Eaton Eagles in most of my youth football, and then as I got older, we moved, came back, and I played for Northampton, which was really like an all-star team because at that junior level, Mallory didn't have a senior, Eaton, and so it was like an all-star team of kids that played for Mallory, Eaton, and Northampton, and we won the city championship. Our only close game was Fox Hill, but the thing I remember about playing for Eaton is so many guys. Some of us were going to go to some went to Hampton because that what was the gosh, I can't think of the neighborhood now, but anyway, I developed lifelong friends playing youth football. And I actually just posted on my personal Facebook page a picture of me when I played 1 year youth football in Newport News for Sanford. And that's generated more conversation between me and my boys than anything. We're giving all these war stories. So, those relationships, and like you said, playing either with those guys in high school or against was Rocky Kroom was on my team at Eaton. Craig Overton, Hurley Miles, Marvin Dickerson, Mike Alexander. So we had a nice little squad, but we couldn't beat Keaton.
And as Kev mentioned, I was over at Tucker Caps because we were bused from. I started at Wythe Elementary, and we were bused over to Tucker Caps, and our uniform colors. Byrd was the Bethel colors at Tucker Caps, except it was the white helmet. But,
white.
The white helmet. But and my dad coached the Tucker Caps team along with Mr. London, Gary London's dad.
Mm-hmm.
Mike London's dad. Gary London was in my class, and Tim Royal. So Tim Royal and I, who Tim played at Bethel linebacker. I think he played a little tight end too. But Tim and I were the running backs for the Tucker Caps football team. But my dad and Mr. London were the two coaches.
Where was Tucker Caps? Was that off of Weaver?
It's
Todd's Lane.
Todd's Lane. It's off Todd's Lane.
Yeah,
so back in the neighborhood. Yeah, and look, I'll tell you, when we did move, when I told you my mom finally bought a house in the Bethel neighborhood, we actually lived in the neighborhood where where it was a cul-de-sac by the baseball field. We lived in that neighborhood. I moved there in '83.
Bethel,
so we were
Bethel
going
baseball field.
Yeah.
No, Tucker Caps.
Oh, Tucker Caps.
Tucker Caps. So we lived in the neighborhood by Tucker Caps. But when you talk about busing, we lived right there. But my brother had to go to Robert E. Lee from there. Yeah. So he went back to Robert E. Lee, where we used to live growing up, in the early 70s. And then in the mid 80s, he had to catch a bus. He could walk to Tucker. We could see Tucker Caps, but had to catch a bus to Robert E. Lee.
So if not for Tucker Caps, I probably would have played for Keaton. The only reason we ended up playing for Tucker Caps because that's what the school, and they had a little league team. But to Kev's point in regards to playing with those guys at such a young age and then transferring over to Hampton High, we had a guy on our team at Hampton High. His name is Andre Davis, and I believe Andre played at Keaton, right, Kev?
That's right.
Andre and I lived on the same street. Well, we all knew Andre was, what's the word for it? Ambidextrous. Is that when you can use both hands?
Yeah.
Right? We growing up with him, he was, I guess, even-handed, for sake of me not butchering the word, ambidextrous. And we were playing Green Run in a playoff game, right, Kev? Our sophomore year, right? Because they actually they tied Kempsville for their district title, but there wasn't a playoff since it was a coin flip, is why we got Green Run. Okay, but anyway, at the end of that game, people were leaving the stadium thinking we were going to lose that game. Well, we had a last-minute drive to win that game. Andre had a cast on his arm, right there. You know, the ones who put half your thumb and the rest of your hand.
Club.
And we threw the ball to him. And we had Marco Stacy was the quarterback.
Marco Stacy, my man.
No one doubted that Andre was going to catch that ball, not with his right hand with the cast on it, but since he was even-handed, he just snagged it in with his left hand. We had no doubt.
Wow.
He was unable to catch the ball because of a cast on his hand. And we went to him, and that's, kept a drive alive to win that game in the final minutes.
Just one note, I think he mentioned Green Run. It was First Colonial.
First Colonial, that's it. Because they ran the beer option.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, did you guys ever play Kempsville? Because DJ Dozier was around your time frame, right?
Well,
DJ Dozier was 83.
I was on a podcast with DJ about a year ago, and he talked about that very game because those two teams had the exact same record, and they flipped the coin to see who would move forward into the playoffs. But we played against DJ 3 years or 2 years, Ken?
2 years, I believe. I believe it was our sophomore year and our senior year.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And he was a beast.
He was a beast.
Because Kempsville tended back in that time to dominate the Beach District.
Yeah.
Now, so you guys won 2 out of 3 years, correct? Your junior and senior year, which would have been 81 and 82.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So were you both receiving mail 10th grade, after 10th grade?
For me,
From colleges?
it was after 10th grade. I think the first school that showed up on the scene was University of North Carolina. They had a coach by the name of Jim Heimbeck, but and he was on the sidelines quite a bit. So 11th grade was the first time I started receiving mail.
Okay.
Rob was getting mail in like 6th grade, I believe. He's telling y'all he getting too much. He's being way too much. I mean, yeah. But yeah, I was getting mail definitely by the end of the year. NC State, the Carolina schools, VMI.
Yep.
Might have got something from Maryland. Basically ACC schools at the time. Yep. South Carolina may have sent me something that I recall. And I tried not to let my head get big, but as I said, we also got some mail from some of the schools back then that were Nebraska, some other schools, but yeah, we were getting mail, I believe. Yeah.
Wow.
So something a lot of people are going to want to hear about is playing for Coach Smith, Coach Mitchell, and Coach Mann. Tell us about your experience. They're all legendary. That program, Coach Smith with all the wins and starting in 1971, everybody's, seems to have a different Mike Smith story. And as I was telling you guys, he's episode 44, and maybe the most in-depth interview that Coach Mike Smith's done on our podcast, so you can check that out. But why don't you guys share a couple of quick stories about playing in that program for Coach Smith, and then we'll transition to getting recruited and your college experience.
I'll go first. Well, in terms of coaching, I don't think we could have had a better group of men that were responsible for us. You named them all. The late Danny Mitchell. We had Stogner as our sophomore year. Coach Stogner was one of our assistant coaches. He could have been a head coach anywhere. And of course, Coach Mann, Coach Smith. We don't need to even make that point. And then we had a coach who was part-time that I don't know if you all think it was Coach Rich. Was his name Coach Rich, Robert?
Yeah,
he came out and he was like
somewhere.
Yeah, he was like a offensive consultant. I mean, he came out and would tweak things, and work with quarterbacks. So we were getting just incredible. Listen, we did film I don't know who else did film like we did film, but we did film work. And so, you know, they say the iron and sky don't lie. So that was it.
Yeah.
And Coach Smith, if you missed any assignment or anything, you would know about it that evening or the next day. Whenever you sit down and watch film, he was gonna say, son, you're in the wrong technique. Son, you're not scraping. Son, you got to fill this gap. Can you take that man on? He'll ask you straight up, can you take that man on? You know, he's looking for an answer. And you better be confident you can. Because, you know, I mean, man, I think Rob mentioned about Highland Springs being, they were big. They were extremely big. But I also remember Petersburg, I think that was our sophomore year, was another state champ. They were defending state champs, if I'm not mistaken.
Great sports school.
Huge. They were talking stuff when we got off the bus.
What was the Huntley kid that played for them, middle linebacker? His older brother Ricky came out of there, but what was the younger one?
I don't remember his first, but yep, Ricky and Lamont.
Ricky Huntley, yeah.
Yeah, Ricky Huntley was a big one.
These guys were grown men, man. I mean, grown men. I'll be honest, I was kind of intimidated a little bit in Petersburg because, look, Kirk, I need you to understand, when we got to the game, there were not a whole lot of white folks in the stands.
I've been in Virginia my whole life. I know about Petersburg.
In Petersburg, so I was like, yo, man, we got a problem tonight because this ain't what we used to. You know, I'm used to seeing, you know, even the band, when I think everybody, I was like, come on, man, what in the world we come into? But that was
Virginia State.
Hey, absolute dogfight. But back to the coaching, I'll say it very quickly. I was able to go to UVA, and in terms of just technique, in terms of being able to read, that was the one thing that I think we had over a lot of teams that we competed against. We could recognize you line up 2 or 3 inches one way, we knew what was coming. We studied it to that degree.
Wow.
You know? Yeah. I mean, it was we picked up on all of the nuance. Coach Smith was on everything. So when I got to UVA, I was ahead of most everybody out there, man, when it just came to, let's just say, how to take on a block. You can't take on a block with either arm. It's got to be the right arm, you know, and things of that nature. So
wow.
we were so sound in all of those things that I think that's what made us that much better. You know, we didn't cheat on anything. So if a man is coming out to block you, you had to take him on proper angle, proper, you know, pad level, you name it. We got it at Hampton High School. I mean, it was baked into us, man. So that was a huge advantage that I had as a freshman at UVA. I was beginning to, you know, by the end of the season, I knew they had 5th-year guys. They had some other guys. I was like, okay, sophomore year, it's going to be a different story. But anyways, in terms of coaching, I think we had a huge benefit because our coaches were so studied, man. They were so well-read, and we often thank them. You know, we've had Zoom calls and we've had just person-to-person conversations where you just want to tell a coach, look, thank you for teaching me the game. I mean, every aspect of the game. I wasn't lacking. I don't feel in any area. There was only one thing that I wish we had done in high school that we didn't have to do it. We won. But I wish we had played some man-to-man. That was one thing that our teams did not really get. We weren't fully indoctrinated in the man-to-man coverage. We had skilled guys like a guy named Leroy Mass. He was a track guy. And so when we ran up against somebody that had a superior receiver, Leroy was going to be moving around a little bit, but it wasn't man-to-man. But Leroy was the guy, though. So, you know, Coach Smith kind of had a way of covering up maybe where he may have lacked a little bit. But, hey, other than that, we were ready to go, man, when we got to college. I mean, all the way. Good to go.
Yeah, and I would totally agree. I mean, I'm right there with you, Kev, with the coaches that we had and the consistency of the coaches that we have. I mean, these guys, I mean, Coach Mitchell, Coach Mann, Coach Starkner before he left, they were a part of that program for so many years. And even those guys that, that were playing JV with Coach Johnson, that commitment of our coaching staff that they had in regards to preparing us to be successful. I mean, even when I left high school, I knew where to find my head coach on Sunday afternoon. I would call the office. I would call his office number because I knew on Sunday, Coach Smith was going to be in his office breaking down film. And as Kevin mentioned, the film study, I mean, this is when you had the reel.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Not just new stuff.
Lunchtime, get your lunch, your bag lunch, and go to Coach Smith's office. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but Coach Smith got the biggest office in Hampton High School, right? It's huge. So, his office bigger than the principal, right? He got the biggest office in the building, okay? And there's only one person can get in that office, that's him. But in any case, it was that commitment. And I tell people this all the time, as athletes, we know the time we put in. When kids go off to college, I'll let them know, hey, that's a 40-hour commitment a week on top of your studies, right? Now, think about the time that the coaches put in. Right. And our coaches were doing that at the high school level. So pre-game snap, right? Formation, down and distance. That aided me tremendously at the next level because I knew how to study film. I knew how to look at tendencies. I knew how to recognize different sets, motion, all of those things. And it went to the point of even when I played in the pros, when I was in Cleveland, Bud Carson was the defensive coordinator, and Bud was the architect of the steel curtain, as well as the sack exchange with the Jets, right?
Jets,
he was a defensive guru. And when I was in Cleveland, right, it got to the point when we were watching film, I was calling out what play was going to be ran, right, out of certain sets. It got to the point where I ran the film because that came from the lessons that I learned being at Hampton High with the committed coaches that we had. And it just, as Kevin said, it carried over. And, I was never a fast guy, right? I had the quickness, but I was never fast, right? In the foot race, right? My best 40 time was a 4.75, right? But I earned the tag that I had a nose for the football. Well, the reason I had a nose for the football was because of my film study. Right. Yep. And developing, being technique sound. Those were the two things. So the coaches we had, man, the commitment they put in, the sacrifices they made to put us in a position to be successful. It's remarkable.
Let me add one thing, if I may, before you guys Rusty Kirk.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Because it's really, I think, key to understanding the one thing that that Coach Mann in particular, but even Coach Smith reinforced in a big way. But our mindset as a team, or as a defense specifically, because I only played defense my freshman year, although I was working with the quarterbacks even as a sophomore. I hated it, but I was. But anyways, we would literally, the literal goal was to not give up a first down. That is, zero. And that's kind of unrealistic in reality, you might say. But then every one of us wholeheartedly believed that we were not going. I remember games when a team got a first down. I was like, man, we have failed. We were that crazy, if you will. And that was the mindset. So yeah, when we got out, you'll see if you go back and look. And I meant to have some. I got some good articles and some. I got some good clips and stuff. But you go down and you'll see a lot of games where I doubt teams got more than 5 or 6 first downs in a given game.
You just jarred my memory, Kevin, because I remember that game against Highland Springs was in the day, and it was somewhat cold because, you know, moving out of the area, you get to understand that Hampton Roads does not get that cold. But that was pretty cold that day. I don't remember Highland Springs getting past the 50-yard line. Am I right?
We shut them. It was
completely shut them down.
Hey, they made the wrong comment for us getting off that bus. And I'll take it. I'll take it a step further. And again, you know, our goal was to play the game the right way, right, and to be as physical as we could be within the rules of the game. I'll tell you this: they had to come get a couple of Highland Spring players off the field quite often.
Oh yeah, I believe it, man. You guys. So speaking of what you talking about in terms of being prepared and great defensive schemes and play, that harkens me to my time at Bethel. I played running back, played with defense. My brother was an all-state linebacker at Bethel and then played at Virginia Tech. But Coach Dennis Kozlowski could coach some defense, man. And I know a lot. I played being a 10th grader. I played, you know, with the seniors that were class 85. We had a tremendous team. So I played with both the Inco brothers. I played with Dee Dee Van, who was a big-time mentor for me, Terry Van, Rodney Howard, Terrell Britt. And, man, most of those guys, Jason Wallace, William Beverly, a lot of guys, Carl Francis, but a lot of people from our program, when they went to college, they were so much more advanced. And Fullwood talked about it, much more advanced and prepared. Like, I look back now, man, between just a regular old Hampton Bethel game, the talent on that field was unbelievable. When you look, I know just my 10th grade year playing with those guys, class of 85, and when we played Hampton, and again, we did crush a crab. Okay, one of those times my 10th grade year. All right, but the talent on that field, and you talk about 10th grade, you guys were ballers. You guys were starting playing 10th grade. I played JV, and then by the end of the year, I was on varsity. But I remember that second time we played Hampton, the ball, two people I was on the kickoff team. This started the game, and the two deep men were Leslie Bailey and Linwood Lumpkins. And I was like, oh, all I know is I'm gonna stay in my lane. And I said, I'm gonna stay in my lane. They kicked that ball. I didn't know who I wanted to get it, but Leslie Bailey caught it, and I was like, I'm staying in my lane. And he went over to the left, and everybody followed him. And I said, I'm staying in my lane. Then he cut back, and it was just me and him. And I was like, what am I gonna do? So we hit. He didn't run me over. We both went down, you know. And I got up and I saw stars. I had probably a concussion, you know, back then. But as a 10th grader, I didn't get run over, and all I wanted to hear was my name over the line. I got up. I heard Rusty Byrd on the tackle, and after that, the only thing I cared about was make sure I go to the right sideline because I didn't know.
Well, and Byrd. And Byrd, what you were going to get with a Hampton Bethel game is this, because let's face it, there were a lot of good ball players on the Peninsula District, right, from all teams. But what you were going to get from a Hampton Bethel game, well, you were going to get two teams that were well coached, disciplined. They're not going to beat themselves. Very similar in their attack in regards to running the rock, physical, knock you off the ball. We're going to run the rock, right? And then go to the pass when you force them to put 8 men in the box, right? I mean, neither team was throwing that ball around the park like they do today. And like some of the teams in the district, because Ferguson used to air it out quite a bit. But you were going to see a game of two well-coached teams, disciplined, and they're not going to beat themselves, right? And you're going to have to play 60 minutes of football.
Yeah.
Because there were teams that played with us maybe for a quarter or two, but they couldn't play with us for 4 quarters.
4 quarters.
But the Hampton Bethel game, you had two teams that were going to go toe-to-toe for 60 minutes.
I want to give both of you 2 questions, and Kevin would like for you to go. Why don't you share with us your favorite Mike Smith story, and also share the best players you played against? Kevin, why don't you just a nugget? Could be personal or whatever.
Mike Smith story. Oh
Yeah.
man.
Goodness.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Just one rib.
No, I mean, I'm gonna try to. It may be a little odd in a way, but I have a Mike Smith story, and that I'm reflecting on right now that actually occurred not at Hampton High School. You know. Anyways, Mike Smith came up to UVA, and the Peach Bowl, actually. He came up to Georgia. We played Purdue in the Peach Bowl. And man, we had worked so hard that week hearing about, I don't know if you remember Jim Everett.
Yeah.
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 What was the defensive back that played? He's all Hall of Famer.
Woodson.
Rod Woodson. I mean, that team was loaded. They were loaded.
Wow.
And so we had practiced. There were 3-hour days. Coach had lost his mind. But anyways, I got news that Coach Smith was coming. So I was like, oh man, you know, this is like being back in the Peninsula. We got playing a bowl game. The UVA, that was a new thing.
Yep.
At Hampton, that was almost like, okay, who are we playing in the playoffs? There ain't no question about are we gonna make it. But anyways, in that game, I worked, man, that week. I was playing strong safety. Again, wasn't very big, but that's what they had me playing. Backing up a guy named Lester Lyles, who had an NFL career. He was 6'2.5", about 220, run your 4.4. He was some kind of talent, but I backed him up. And anyways, Lester got hurt in that game, and all I was playing was special teams, and I might have got in a certain nickel situation or something, but I was watching the game, man, and I was ticked. I was hot. I was like, hey, I'm being honest with you. But anyways, Lester, before the first half ended, he took a shot, went down, and I'm going to tell you, man, I was like, okay, I'm going to get to play and let Coach Smith see what's become. It's my sophomore year. So played that game, man, and I feel like I had a solid game. In that game against Purdue, they ran a lot of 4 wide, 3 wide, 4 wide, a lot of motion. You name it, it was coming. And Jim Everett, you know the deal. So
yeah, oh yeah.
So in that game, anyways, I think they had a lead on us at halftime, but man, we pretty much clamped down, and defense won that game. And there was one particular play where Jim Everett, they needed a first down on 3rd or something like that, man. And I was like, if you throw it, I'm taking it to the house. I had a bead on it, and I broke on it. I was like waiting for him to throw it, and he pumped and held it. I said, man, this boy is for real. He sees everything. But a lot of quarterbacks would have let it go. But he pumped, and so I was like, cool. All right, we're off the field. Long story short, we win the game, and I'm like, I remember that play. And as I get off the field, I meet up with Smitty. He's talking, and Smitty, you know how he talks. Who kept? I got to tell you, son. He says, that was one good damn play. He said, I saw that play you made out there. I was like, Coach Smith, he was watching. He didn't miss it.
Yeah.
And he often tells a story about it, when he's talking to his Big Ten coaches and whatnot. And but that's just one little moment, man, that I was really proud to be able to play for him. He made the trip down to Georgia. I wanted him to see a crabber on the field. And we held it down. We took care of business that night, won the Peach Bowl. Hey, it's just a proud moment that I have shared with Coach Smith. And so that's something I'll never forget. Your second question, you asked for a Coach Smith story, and what was your second question?
Some of the players you played against in those 3 years in the PD.
And okay, some of the players that we played against of note in the Peninsula District. Okay, well, maybe I'll choose one from my sophomore year, and I'll move on up. And there's no particular reason why I'm pulling this particular person, but I'm going to note Walter Bailey was obviously, he was one of the big names back in the day.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would like to note that, I mean, if you go watch the film, and that's all I'll say, but we played them. That was one of the hardest hitting games we had. But Walter Bailey, I had the highest respect for him, man. And I think this was our sophomore year. So Walter gets to play, and somehow he comes through a crack. And I'm like, okay, this is Walter and me. And I think at the end of the day, Walter knew what time it was after that play. Because I mean, it was loud.
Yeah.
It was loud. It was everything, bro. And you talking about Rusty getting up. Now I played it off, but for a moment there, I was absolute cuckoo, bro. I was, but my satisfaction was looking at Walter Bailey and seeing his face mask broke off of his helmet. So I was like, okay, I got my job. I got my job done. He had to go to the sideline and get some screwdrivers and put some more screws in his face mask. I took it off.
Yeah, but one of the things I want to paint a picture for younger people is the old Darling Stadium, smaller, and it was standing room only for those tickets, and those tickets were sold out for that game. Remember, you bought them at school and at the bank.
Yep.
And Rusty and I have talked. We were younger. There was a couple times I hopped over that wall, by the way. That brick. That wall.
Okay. You tell me.
Right.
You tell me. Okay.
Right. So then, and you remember, one end zone had bleachers, and then maybe the other one added, but it only sat 6,000-7,000 people.
Yeah.
That was. I think it seats more now, but that's the thing I want to point out is how big of a game that was, and
I think they packed 9,000 in for the Hampton.
Standing room only. Standing room only.
I want to say, I thought when I played in that game 4 times, and I want to say that it was, not. I know it was standing room, but I've heard numbers of 9,000-10,000.
Yeah, I think you're right.
That's right.
And they had 3 gates. They had one right on Victoria Boulevard. Like there was only 8 feet of sidewalk, and then there were 2 on the road that Darling was on the other side. I guess that's heading west, but
on each end. Yep.
Yeah. So that was the way. So how about you, Robert? Give us a Coach Smith story.
What's interesting about a Mike Smith story, and I just thought about, wasn't a whole lot of stories I can share in regards to, well, you know what? I do have one. All right. So was actually several, but I'll give this one in regards to the relationship that Coach had with his players. Senior year, I think Kevin and I were the only 2 guys who had extensive playing time our 10th grade year leading up to our senior year. And at that time, we had not lost a game on the field. We had 2 forfeits, but we had not lost a game on the field. So we had a good winning streak going.
Mm-hmm.
And that year, Kickertan and a couple other teams, or Kickertan, for instance, stands out to me because they had a couple of speed merchants on that team. And they were really competitive. Scott Woodleaf was a quarterback who's a hell of a competitor.
Oh, yeah.
When the word
was very good back then.
Or the name Scott Woodleaf, competitor. Always has been. I think his brother Jerry actually played at Hampton. But for whatever reason, Scott ended up at Kickertan. But we had a couple of teams in our district that had, that were pretty good. And we've always, the showdown with Bethel. And Kevin and I both had to change positions that year. I went from playing deep, offensive line, offensive tackle, and defensive tackle to offensive tackle and inside linebacker. Because we were thin. We had a lot of young players, good young players that were coming into their own, but we were really thin that year in regards to guys who had experience, game experience. And Kevin started playing quarterback, right? For the first time, right, Kev? Starting quarterback?
That's right.
Right. So we were doing double duty. And I'll be honest with you, man. I was exhausted by the time we rolled around to that Bethel game, because and I guess we had so many young guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't fully trust them at that time. So my mindset was always, anytime that ball came off the ground, it was my play to make. But for whatever reason this year, it was double time, right?
Yeah.
And we roll into that Bethel game, and I'm exhausted, and I'm trying to figure out how are we going to win this game. We got to win this game, right? We can't let down those our former players who came before us. And at Hampton, what's unique about Hampton is that when it's your time to lead, it's your time to lead. That torch was passed every year. Desmond Holloman got it, right? And from Victor Hill, right? And the quarterbacks passed it on. So, although before my senior year, I may have been getting some highlights, but when Desmond Holloman told me to shut up in the huddle, I shut up. And Marco Stacy told me to shut up in his huddle, I shut up, right? It was that leadership that we had. So senior year, it was Kevin and my turn to lead, right? A very young team. So I'm tired, I'm exhausted, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, the gas is low, we got to get this one. That night before the game, I got a teammate of mine. We went over to, what's Hot Shot's government name, Kev? Hot Shot for Bethel.
Williams.
Jimmy Williams.
Jimmy Williams, his dad.
Jimmy Williams. Okay.
Right. Yep.
So he was a good running back for Bethel, a great running back. And so I get a teammate of mine. I said, okay, we got to go over to his house and we got to try to intimidate him before this game. Right. So we ride over to Stewart Garden, right? He lived over in Stewart Garden, right? And we went up to his house. I had a car. We put the headlights. We put the high beams on his house, and we go up to the door and we ring the doorbell. And his sister comes to the door and we're like, "Hey, Jimmy here," right? We call him Hot Shot. Hot Shot here. Yeah. They're like, "No, he ain't here," right? So he's tell him Banks and Rodney Shepard was looking for him. This is the night before the game, right? So we trying to play Mr. Intimidate. So anyway, we get to game night, right? And we go out for the coin toss. And after, the coin toss goes down, the referees tell us, "Hey, gentlemen, shake hands and let's come out and play a good game tonight." I refuse to shake hands.
Ooh.
The referees, and it wasn't that I was trying to show poor sportsmanship, but I was trying to continue with that intimidation of Hot Shot or the Bethel team at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And the referee stopped and he goes over to Coach Smith and he goes, "Coach, 55 will not shake hands." And I'm scared to death. I'm like, oh, and Kevin and I went out for the coin toss, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just doing an Ali stare down, right? I'm doing an Ali stare down on him, right? And I'm afraid to turn around because I don't know how Coach Smith is going to react, right? I'm terrified. And Coach Smith tells the ref he doesn't have to shake hands.
Go ahead.
Nothing in the rule book to say he had. And our sidelines went crazy. And we went out and got that dub.
Man.
Yeah.
I said, we shake hands after the game. But we got to have this dub tonight.
Yeah.
Man.
So it's that relationship that Coach Smith has with his players. I mean, it's that loyalty, it's that trust, right? And I tell coaches young coaches this all the time. Never lose the trust of your players. Once a coach loses the trust of their players, they're dead. They're done.
All right.
That's my Mike Smith story.
Real quick.
Good stuff.
You and I talked when we first contacted about some of the great players that you played against. Kevin talked about Walter Bailey. You played, great players. And by the way, there's some good players in Newport News in that time too.
Yep.
I think was Al Toon, y'all's years?
Toon was a senior our 10th grade year.
Okay, because he was a bad man.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. So how about Robert?
I guess I'm gonna tell you what. It was so many great players in the PD at that time. Mm-hmm. I mean, DJ Dozier was over in the Beach District, so he wasn't in the PD. You had your Tim Roy, you had your Walter Baileys, you had your Raymond Stewarts. You know, it was, I tell you what, though, there's a guy.
John Britt, y'all play against John Britt?
Britt was after us, I believe.
Was he?
Was he? Kev, Britt?
I think he might have been
John
on the
was
team.
80. John was 84. Terrell was 85.
Okay. But I tell you what, there was a guy that played for Phoebus my 10th grade year, and his name is Roger Parks. Right? Played defensive line. Roger Parks was an all-district defensive end. I think he played collegiately at Norfolk State. Roger was a big old boy. Roger, I mean, Roger was a big. Roger had to be. Let me see. I was 218. Roger was probably 255, maybe 245, 255.
That was massive back
then.
Yeah,
in high school back then. And Coach Smith, before every game, he would, you know, on Monday, he would tell you a little bit about your opponent. So that week prior to the game, I'm in the 10th grade, and he stops in front of me. He just shakes his head, looks at me, shakes his head, and he goes, "You got a big one this week," right? He's just shaking his head, right? So anyway, I mean, he was a big old boy.
Yeah.
First play, in my head, I was playing offensive tackle, and I said, I got to give him everything I got. I got to go for the knockout punch right now. So when that ball came off the ground, I mean, I hit Roger with everything I had. I mean, I put those two bike boats on him, right? I mean, it was a headshot, right? Back then, the game was a little different. So boats on him, right? Now, when I hit him, and I could see him cringe when I hit him, but he was so big and so strong, he grabbed me and bounced me off the ground, right?
Yeah.
So I go back to the huddle, and I said, all right, I'm going to do it again. So I fire off the ball, and I hit him again. And same thing, he grabs me, bounced me off the turf. So I said, all right, so the third time, I'm going to cut him because he's mad, right? And he's going to try to hurt me now. So Kev, when I came off the ball, I cut him. I not only cut him, I took his feet, right, and threw him over his head. Right? But my goal that night was that Roger Parks' name was not going to be called that night.
Right.
I hear you.
That's a great story. That's a great story.
Man.
So real quick, Rusty, Kevin, did you play with Derek Jenkins at UVA, tailback from Phoebus?
Yes.
Yeah. Great
Derek
guy.
He was a senior my freshman year.
Okay, because Derek.
Let's do this.
Yeah, hold on.
Let's do this, Kirk. Let's look. We've covered early years. We've covered high school. We're going to make this a 2-part series.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up part 1. We kept it under an hour, and then we'll be right back. So folks will have 2 different videos or audios, and then we'll finish up with your collegiate, professional, what you're doing now, and all of that. All right.
Yep. So we're going to catch up. Good call, Rusty. We talked about recruiting a little bit. We're going to tell a story about that. So everybody that's watching this, please subscribe. We'll have all of our stuff here. All right. Now we're going to separate this interview part 1 and 2. So if you subscribe and you click on the bell icon, you'll get a notification when part 2 is out. You don't want to miss that. We're going to talk about the recruiting experience. We're going to talk about what these guys have gone through the years, what they've learned, where both of these gentlemen are today. So please subscribe and hit the bell icon, and we will see you on episode 80, part 2 of Robert Banks and Kevin Gould.
Kirk and Byrd are out.